I wish I could sit down with Aunt Betty and say, tell me what it was like to know David Milne as a young painter. And he was older than her. What we understand from David Silcox and some of the others who've written about the biographies of David Milne is that during this period he was up there, and that he connected with Aunt Betty as the lone educated person in this very remote area of the Big Chute, and she being the school teacher and he being an artist. They exchanged books from libraries and other things that they spent a lot of time together. It would be interesting to know if it was only that or whether there was more to their relationship, but there certainly seemed to be a very strong connection between them. One of the things that happened, of course, is that he did the picture of her and her students called Goodbye to Teacher, or Goodbye to a Teacher. That was a watercolor done in a number of different versions. And when he returned to Toronto, having left the Big Chute, he instructed his agent to contact Aunt Betty and to offer her her pick of any of the pictures she wanted. And if she didn't like any of them, she could have anything. And one of the phrases he used was not just the average ones, she could have any of the best ones that he wanted. And the biographer noted that this was uncharacteristic of David Milne, that he was not somebody that typically parted with his paintings other than through sale. And he said that she was to have it framed for her and delivered to her so that there would be no cost to her whatsoever in receiving this thing. And the interesting thing is, you look at that picture, she doesn't look like a schoolmarm. And if you picture teachers in that time and place, you would picture her being dressed in a much more serious looking outfit. And instead, it's a very almost romantic outfit that she's wearing. So if I could have Aunt Betty for a visit right now, I'd say, so what was it really like knowing David Milne on that? Uncle John Fitzpatrick, I wish I knew to ask him about the Olympics. He was an Olympic athlete, part of the team that went over with Percy Williams in 1928, where many medals were won. He actually beat Percy in some races over the time. I wish I could ask him questions about what it was like at that time to be at the Olympics and to have all those experiences, and his inventions, to talk about what it was like to invent the things that he did. James A. Cowan, growing up, I didn't know half the stories. I went to Wheaton, took a writing course, and my writing professor was all about Hemingway. And I didn't know of the Hemingway connection. So here I'm taking this course on writing, not knowing the stories about Hemingway that I would have been able to share and say, can you imagine? But I'd love to pick his brain about what it was like to work with FDR at that stage of his presidency, what Hemingway was like in greater detail, the many companies that he served, Cyrus Eaton, who was not only a big corporate magnate in North America, he was a Bill Gates of his time in terms of corporate power, but he was also someone who was very interested in peace. And he set up the Pugwash conferences and other things that were part of that, Grandpa Cowan being involved in that. I would have asked him about Stratford. He was one of the ones that helped found Stratford, and he provided the office and the publicity money for the first year of the Stratford Festival. And he was the one that had created the idea of treating it not just as a new venue being available, but as a movie premiere. So he used the same tactics you would do in releasing a movie to promote the first Stratford Festival back in 1953, including having the National Film Board do a film that recorded the whole process of starting this, which is now available, called The Adventure of Stratford, which records that first year and all the uncertainties that were part of that story. I would love to talk to Charlie Jolliffe about his many movies and other parts of his career in television, and his love of film and acting and drama. Aunt Jeanne was somebody that we saw very occasionally, so she would be somebody that would have been interesting just to get to know on a personal level, as somebody that seemed to be both very effective with people and having had a very interesting life. Uncle Stuart, I would have asked him about the war And like most veterans of that time, he probably wouldn't want to say any more than I did what I needed to do, or I was just serving. But we've seen some letters that he wrote to some of the siblings that talked about his life during the war, and that would be fascinating to know more about what he experienced as a soldier. Uncle Alan was in the heart of the Trudeau era, along with others before, in Ottawa, and while he did Canadian Affairs as part of a publication that he did during that time, it would have been fascinating to get his perspectives as a Mandarin of what was life like in that time, in that era in Ottawa. Hugh, who was the sibling who died rather young, was a cartoonist, and we have only, I think, 1 or 2 samples of work that he did, but it would have been interesting to know about him as a cartoonist. He obviously had a love of art and all of those things. Uncle Don lives on in memory because of his many phone calls and enchanting conversations on the occasion of any birthday, anniversary, or other reason to give you a call. And it would be interesting to know more about his life and the kinds of things that were important, and especially in their younger years, what it was like for them when they would go up to Owen Sound or to live in these places. And I knew that he was always into being a character, in the sense of doing things that were unexpected, and just his voice was a very enchanting voice. It was not one of those solid, straight voices. He always had ups and downs, and whenever you talked to him, it was with a lot of affect and affection. So he was somebody that we always look forward to that phone call on special days of your life, knowing that he would always faithfully call. Those are the kind of things you wish you could just sit down and have the benefit of a good interview. And part of it, as we said, was their personality. Part of it was the generation, where they didn't tend to talk about themselves a lot. And it was just a matter of fact. They treated, I think they all treated their lives as, this is what I am, this is what I do. What's the surprise? What's the big deal?